Welcome to my 2022 exit report series. Actually, it is February 1st, 2023, but we're reviewing the 2022 season for all 32 NFL teams. And today I slide into the AFC East to talk about the Buffalo Bills. There's no other way to talk about this other than to say, hey, we had a disappointing year. It ended not the way we expected it to end, because for the Buffalo Bills, it may have been Super Bowl or bust. I started all my recaps of 2022 or previews of 2022 with the words 13 seconds. If you remember back to 2021, the end of the season, that great game, Buffalo against Kansas City, Buffalo took the lead. They had 13 seconds left in the game. They kicked off. They made some mistakes on the kickoff. They made some mistakes on coverage. All you had to do was commit a couple of penalties, and then it would have been down to a Hail Mary. Instead, it came down to Josh Allen sitting on the sidelines watching as Kansas City went ahead and ended up winning that game, coming from behind in those last 13 seconds. So it's basically 13 seconds all in for 2022. And why not? Going into 2022, this looked like a loaded roster. Their mission, obviously, was to get to the Super Bowl, something they haven't done in at least 3 decades. So starting the year, they'd come off an 11-6 record, but that played out more like 13-4, maybe even a little bit more. They had a plus 194 point ratio. They had lost a lot of close games, but they'd blown out other teams. Their sack ratio was 42-37. They had the number 1 third down defense. They had the great pass defense. In this day and age, to hold a team under 60% is unbelievable. Only one team did that actually for 2022. 3 or 4 did it in 2021, led by Buffalo, who allowed just 56% on the season in 2021. Now, there were concerns going into 2022. Cornerback White was not ready to start the season. How would that impact their great pass defense? And Josh Allen tried to do too much, even at the end of 2021, moving into 2022. He had thrown 15 interceptions, and he needed to cut down on that for 2022. So what were my preseason expectations? First of all, obviously there was going to be a tougher schedule because they had the number 1 schedule. They played the first place schedule, and the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Patriots did not, but there was still a clear differential in my power ratings between Buffalo and the rest of the division. Number 2, their schedule, despite being tough, they faced no teams that were coming off a bye week. So that's nice. Plus, they had a plus 12 or plus 13 rest differential. So they were getting teams when either they had more rest than other teams or they had an equal amount of rest. And basically, I set my power rating at 33, which was my highest number, not different than a lot of other people who thought Buffalo was the favorite to get to the Super Bowl in the AFC. Again, all in, they were focused. What did they do? They went ahead and selected Von Miller as their key free agent acquisition. That would help their pass rush. They were already blessed with 2 or 3 pass rush specialists that they'd gotten from the previous 2 drafts. Therefore, it looked like the pass rush was going to be much improved. And there were some warning signs as well, and we'll get into that as we talk about their seasonal keys. These are from my team sheets, my seasonal keys. Key number 1. Again, they were better than their 11-6 record showed. And now that they were adding Von Miller, they were going to be a little bit better as well in that particular area. I projected their sacks to be 44, moving up in that area, with their sacks allowed to be 30, so right around the same as to what we had before. I thought Von Miller would have an impact. That would be one of my seasonal keys. And rookie James Cook from an average draft, but still they were drafting late in each round. James Cook from the University of Georgia, I thought gave them a pass catching option that Singletary didn't. Now, Buffalo didn't rely on the run a lot in 2021, and they are still looking to be more of a pass heavy team. The number of runs they have per game is skewed a little bit because Josh Allen runs 7 to 10 times a game, and he's a prolific runner because he has that body build that he just bowls over people. But they don't often rely on just Singletary and Cook to run the ball. And Cook is a little more well-rounded. He had the opportunity, once he got acclimated to the NFL, to offer them a change of pace option and somebody who could get to the hole faster and to be creative on pass sets. So I thought this would diversify their offense just a little bit more. The next key I had, of course, was what's up with the secondary. They were down, they were down at least one cornerback, that's White, who was going to miss the first 4 to 6 games. There were some injuries that developed not only prior to the season, but as it turned out early in the season that almost decimated their secondary. They're playing without 3 starters and sometimes 4 starters in their secondary. So I figured their pass defense would regress a little to 60 or about 61%, which is still in the top 5. But I didn't think it would be shut down as compared to 2021. And then finally, I thought you'd see the best effort of Buffalo coming right out of the gate. No season win decisions for me. I'm much more of an under player. I have 15 season win decisions this year. As I've said in previous podcasts, 12 of them were for underplays. If I had to do anything on this, I would have gone over the roughly 12 and a half, I believe, line that was set, because I did think that Buffalo was going to be tough to beat, given the fact that they had a good rest differential, even facing the tough opponents they had, including a revenge game against Kansas City. And speaking of the schedule, take a look at what the early schedule was all about. They had to start against the Rams, but the Rams usually do not play many or any of their starters in preseason. So I thought Buffalo would be more prepared for that particular game. Then they had to face Tennessee, who was a number 1 seed in the previous year. An interesting Miami team that was rebuilding their offense with an offensive-minded coach. Up next was Baltimore at Buffalo, at Baltimore, which I figured would be a very tough game for them. Then Pittsburgh, always tough to play a physical Pittsburgh team, even though they were rebuilding offensively. Then came the grudge match against Kansas City at Kansas City, followed by Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay. That was one tough starting schedule. Basically, what they did in those games, they went 6-1. And I thought I was prepared for how to handle that. I went 4-0 in their games. So I was very pleased with how the early season started for Buffalo. 6-1, they looked like the clear Super Bowl leader at that particular point. But then there were warning signs. First of all, they had 19 sacks in those first 6 games. So they were on pace to get almost 60 sacks for the season. And then Von Miller went down, and I still thought the pass rush was going to be formidable, maybe not quite to the level that 19 in 6 games, but instead it dropped off the map. In fact, they barely achieved another 19, 20 or so sacks the rest of the way. So that fell off. We saw the injuries in the secondary, and through that 7-game streak where they were 6-1, they were allowing 64%. So that was an 8% increase. Admittingly, there were some tough quarterbacks in that stretch of games, but still, it was a little too high for my liking. I thought that while other teams were ascending, Buffalo was either holding steady or down just a little bit at that particular time period. So it was interesting to me that as they were going through the rest of the first half of the season and the second half of the season, I had no more plays all the rest of the way on Buffalo and no more plays the rest of the way against Buffalo. So I just have my team sheet and I see a lot of X's where I did not make a play on any of their games. Either the spread was too high or there were some warning signs or matchup problems. So I basically sat it out after the first 7 games. Buffalo's power rating was still number 1 most of the year. By the end of the year, they were joined by teams such as Cincinnati. Kansas City was right behind them. If healthy, Philadelphia was right there, and San Francisco. There were 5 teams that stood out in the NFL. Buffalo was right there at the top of the list, but there was no more separation like there was in the first half of the year. So Buffalo kind of played out the way I thought they would play out, based on the metrics that started off the season. Now, in my opinion, in addition to other teams catching up to them, and in addition to the secondary ending still close to 64%, Josh Allen continued to be turnover prone, which was unfortunate for the team. The team finished roughly about even in the turnover ratio, and Josh Allen turned the ball over. I'm looking at my notes. Pretty close to the 15 times that he had turned it over the previous year. So because of that, because he tries to do a little bit too much, Buffalo was a little bit more vulnerable. The sacks had decreased. Still a top 5 team, but what we saw in the playoffs was that Cincinnati was ascending to the point where their sound fundamental defense frustrated Josh Allen. And Joe Mixon and company had a pretty good game and a pretty good game plan. And we all know about Joe Burrow, obviously taking nothing away from Josh Allen, but Joe Burrow is my number 2 rated quarterback. Josh Allen in the NFL, my number 3 rated quarterback. Not much difference, different styles, but not much difference between the two. But one could see that these teams were pretty much dead even going into the postseason. And unfortunately for Buffalo, it was another season where the expectations just didn't match the results. They're not going anywhere. They're still going to be strong. So where are we for 2023? Where would I put them right now? Well, first of all, I think they have some running back decisions to make. Running backs, you can add and subtract all the way through. Do they keep Singletary another year? Do they go ahead and give Cook more touches? And we saw that at the end of the year. Cook was getting about 50 to 55% of the snaps. When you had to close out games, when Buffalo needed first downs to protect a lead, Singletary was there as the bigger back and the back proven to be not fumble prone. But in the course of the first 3 quarters of any game, I think we've seen the changing of the guard where Cook is going to be trusted more with the offense. They've got wonderful wide receivers. Josh Allen is still obviously a top 3 quarterback. The offensive lines, they could use another body. As it turned out, they kept sacks down. They were in the upper 10 teams, the top 10 in terms of protecting their quarterback. They hope for better health in the secondary. They have a second-year cornerback, Elam, who become more acclimated. They hope that White stays healthy. Von Miller will probably be back. No decisions reached, but I expect a ramp up of the pass rush. I still think this is the team to beat in the AFC East, and I still think, along with Cincinnati, that they will be in the top 2 conversations for highest power rating in the entire AFC and probably the entire NFL. As far as season win totals, I'm not looking to bet overs. One injury could change that, especially when you have a dynamic quarterback like Josh Allen. But I do think they are the front runner in the AFC East with one caveat, and that's the AFC East is getting better and better. The Jets, who I will be previewing next, we saw how their roster improved tenfold from 2021 to 2022. Miami, they're going to be better defensively. They had some injuries, and offensively, if Tua can stay healthy. And New England is still transitioning, but they're going to have better coaching as well. This is one tough division. It might prevent them from being the favorite to be the number 1 seed in the AFC moving forward. But make no mistake about it, Buffalo was still one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NFL. That's my look back and look forward with the Buffalo Bills in my 2022 exit report. Up next, it's going to be the New York Jets. And as the scroll says, they're going to be a fascinating team to review. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I hope you catch the New York Jets preview coming up later today. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.